algorithm suitable for real-time purposes, because of course real-time systems are not concerned too much with average response times. They are more concerned with worst-case response time, and more specifically how this worst-case response time relates with the given deadline, okay? So with the given timing requirements that is specified for the task itself. So we said the shortage outburst may be preemptive or non-preemptive. It is a static algorithm. It can be used online or offline, and we went through the proof of optimality, like it's a simple by contradiction argument that shows you what happens if I had, by contradiction, if I assume having a schedule different from SJF, which leads to a better average response time than SJF. So in that case, this is the contradiction assumption. Let's see if we reach a contradiction. And the reason was, okay, if that is the case, try to find the first task for which this does not hold, so for which the scheduling algorithm is not the same as what SJF would schedule. So in this case, the first task here is the long task is scheduled before the short task. So remember that we assumed all jobs be ready at the beginning, right away, okay? So then we said, okay, but what if we replace these two tasks, and that would lead to a sum of finishing time which is better, it is smaller than in the original case, okay? So there is nothing that impedes us doing this switch, okay? And that would lead to a better average response time, okay? Average, so the sum of this value divided by the number of tasks, okay? So I'm not repeating entirely the proof we saw last time, but again, we can do the same for any other kind of pairs of tasks that whose scheduling decision was different than the one taken by shortage of first. Okay, so we have basically a chain of this task switching that eventually reaches the very same scheduling decision that SJF implements. Okay, and in all these task switching, we go towards a minimization of the response time. Okay. So again, we minimize on and on and on the response time until we reach the response time of shortage of first, which is, as we proved, optimal. Okay? Shortage of first provides the best average response time in any possible algorithm. Okay? So that was last time. Is it suited for a real-time system? Not, because we have cases where scheduling according to SJF leads to a non-feasible case. Okay, here I basically schedule first the short one, then the middle one, and then the long one, according to the SJF policy. But if we decide to use a different scheduling algorithm, we can see that the one finishes before its deadline, the two before its deadline, the three before its deadline. Okay, so SJF, again, as we said, is not suitable for real-time activities, real-time scheduling. Okay? Then we started identifying alternatives algorithm, priority-based algorithms. For instance, the POSIX scheduler has a priority scheduler in it with 99 priorities. It may be static or dynamic, so the way I assign priorities can be decided once and for all before the task execution or dynamically during the task execution. Okay? So for instance, rate monotonic or deadline monotonic scheduling algorithm is a static fixed priority algorithm, while EDF, earliest deadline first, is a dynamic priority scheduling algorithm. Why is that? Because EDF decides which one to schedule based on the absolute deadline, which, as we saw, is a parameter that may change from job to job, from instance to instance. It is something that I know only when my activities, when my job arrive. Okay? So this is a dynamic scheduler. Okay, we said that SJF and FIFO and first come first served are basically instances of general priority-based scheduling algorithm. Shortage of first basically assign priorities based on tasks execution time. So the shorter the execution time, the higher the priority. Is it a static or a dynamic scheduling algorithm? Static priority or dynamic priority? Static, exactly. Okay, this is something that does not change from job to job. Okay, it is always that for that job. Okay, a task has a worst case execution time assigned that distinguishes that task, and the priority will never change. Okay, while first come first served assigns priority dynamically based on tasks' arrival times. Okay, since I know the arrival times only when they happen. Okay. This is a dynamic priority scheduling algorithm. Okay, first come first served is a dynamic priority scheduling algorithm. The round robin is similar to the FCFS, only we said we have a time quantum that when it expires, we basically preempt the running task and put it back into the queue. Okay, so it is basically a first come first served, but we also add a time quantum that, when it's over, makes the task preemptable for to execute other activities instead. Okay, and we also saw. I'm going fast because these are all things that we saw last time, just to reinsert in the same thread. So we said that with a round robin scheduler, the response time of my activity, okay, the worst case response time of my activity depends on how many other tasks are scheduled with me. Okay, so if I have 3 other tasks concurrently scheduled with me, then I will have my time quantum, then I should allocate the other guys, then it's my time quantum again, then the other guys, then again my time quantum. So it is simple to compute a formula that computes the worst case response time as the number of big interval that I need to use, okay, which is Ci over Qi. Okay, if I have a time quantum of 2, like in this case, and my tasks need to execute for 6, like in this case, so it will be 6 over 2. So 1, 2, 3 is 3. Okay, times what? The length of the time quantum of a hyper period of that scheduling there. Okay. So n times q. So given q, defining as q the time slot, the basic time slot, which is a lot in round robin fashion, then if we have n tasks, then this hyper period is not a hyper period, because hyper cycle is n times q. Okay. So overall, n times q times c over q, q gets simplified, and it's easy to see that the response time is proportional, it's not exactly equal, it's proportional to n times your execution time. Okay? So the larger my execution time, the larger of course the response time, but also the more tasks are concurrently scheduled with me, the larger will be the response time. Okay? So we said it's like having a processor dedicated to you, only that processor is n times slower than your original processor. Okay? So if the preemption, the time slot policy never comes to play, so if my time slot, allotted time slot is greater than the execution time, then we said that the round robin coincide with the first come first served. Okay, so I will never preempt my task when executed because the timer will never expire. Okay, so basically, if we want to integrate in the previous formula also the context switch time, okay, the context switch time, when the timer expires, I need to pay a context switch time. You remember, right? So it does not come for free preemption here. Okay, context switch are expensive. So let's try to assume a delta every time I have a context switch. Okay, so in that case, the formula generalizes to the same as before, just adding a delta. Okay, adding a delta on the length of the hyper period, of the hyper time slot, okay, of the bigger time slot. So it's n times q plus delta, okay, 1, 2, 3, n times, okay. How many times? Again, as before, Ci over Qi, okay. This is the final formula. This was the last thing we saw last time. So basically, we can notice here that again, it depends as before on the number of tasks and your execution time, but also this delta factor comes into play because the larger the preemption overhead with respect to the time quantum, okay, the bigger the preemption overhead with respect to the time quantum, okay, the larger will be my response time, okay? So when this tends to 0, okay, it will be exactly the response time as before. When this is consistent, so when this, assume that this, for instance, is basically more or less like Q, okay, then you can see that it's twice as before, okay? A very simple relation that tells you, okay, if I have a context switch, it's better to allocate also the time it takes for that context switch. This is one of the scheduler that is adopted in Linux, where you have different priority queues, okay? In the FIFO scheduler or round robin scheduler, SCAD5 or SCAD-RR, you basically have one queue for priority. So, you know, we have a number of priorities, say 99, and we said last time, what if two tasks have two different priorities? Okay, then I always schedule the one with the highest priority. What if two tasks have the same priority? Then this policy, basically, depending if it's a FIFO or a RR, round robin, essentially implements what we saw before. Okay, so if I have two tasks of the same priority, I basically enqueue them into the same priority-based queue. Okay, so if two tasks have a priority 3, then I will include them in ready queue 2. Okay, if I implement a first in first out, basically the first one that comes is the one that goes and executes. Okay, if I'm implementing a round robin, then it's again what we saw before. So I will schedule for a given time the first one. When the timer expires, I will preempt it and put it back and take the next one and so on. Okay, nothing difficult. Okay, this is just a way, a possible scheduling policy that you may decide to use within Linux. Okay, so as long as tasks have different priorities, everyone goes to a different queue, and you always take, if there is anyone, the one from the highest priority queue. Okay, if there is no one in this queue, then you go to the second. If there is no one, you go to the third, and so on. Okay, if you have multiple tasks in the selected queue, you basically execute either FIFO, okay, first come first serve, or round robin, like we saw in the previous slide. Okay, now I'm slowing down a little bit. That was like a summary of the previous classes. Okay, just 2 slides to complete this topic. When you have multiple queues, multiple feedback queues, this is a further extension, not so popular in this scheme, but just to tell you some possible scheduling choices that you may decide to implement. So assume you have n different queues, okay? So like the queue we saw before. And assume we use a first in, first out order to sort the queue, okay, that we have. And assume we specify a time quantum, like in the round robin scheduler that we just saw before. Okay, so multiple queues, one queue is in FIFO order, and we have a time quantum, so we are using a round robin. So, a possible scheduler that was adopted in the past, let's read together. So the scheduler chooses the first process in the highest priority queue and sets the timer equal to Q. Okay, so basically, like I said before, I start from the highest priority queue, okay, and I take, if there exists someone there, I take it and execute it for Q time units at most, okay? If the timer expires, I preempt it and put it back, okay? But I don't put it back to the original queue, I put it back to the lower priority queue, okay? So basically, this scheduler, what does it do? It tries to solve aging problems of lower priority activities or IO-bound tasks. Meaning, if you have a task that monopolizes the processor while other tasks are executing, what you may want to try is for highest priority tasks, allow them to execute for Q, then decrease the priority by 1. Then another Q, then you decrease. Then another Q, then you decrease. So if a task really has a lot to execute, it eventually will reach the end of your multiple feedback queue. Okay? Why feedback queue? Because a task is not put back in the same queue it was extracted from, but it basically trickles down to the lower and lowest priority queue, the longer it executes. Okay? So if the process completes or blocks before the timer expires, okay, then basically we are okay, we are done, and we just take the next process to execute, okay? When this task will be unblocked or when this task will restart, I will re-put it back to the highest priority queue, okay? So if instead this process did not complete by queue, like I said, we move the process to the lower priority queues, okay? If it was priority 3, then it goes priority 1 less, which is 4, okay? And 5, and 6, and 7, and 8. Okay, so when a process is activated or it is unblocked, I said, it goes to the highest priority queue, RQ0, okay? So why do we do that? So we allow that, we allow the process that executes for a short time to have a better chance to get and execute to complete the execution. Also, if we had processes which are I/O bound, you remember an I/O bound process like we said last time, so a task that repeatedly needs to access I/Os. So what we do is allowing him, when it is unblocked, to restart again with highest priority, okay? So that we don't just have it blocking multiple times, okay? So the last thing, if we want, optionally, you could, the processes that go to the very low queues, so processes that need to execute for quite a while, if we don't want them to starve too much, we can design a policy for which we boost their priority whenever we want, just to avoid their starvation, okay? So this is just a case of the multiple feedback scheduling policy. Again, it tries to reduce or avoid the penalty for I/O bound processes, okay? So that when a process is repeatedly blocked, it does not suffer from a scheduling perspective, okay? So we would like, if that process is potentially critical for my system, and we would like it to quickly react when it is unblocked for waiting I/O decision, okay? Basically, it is always restarted from the highest priority queue, okay? Also, short processes are likely to complete very soon, okay? I/O bound processes are executed, as I said, in very short delay. The problem is for long CPU bound processes, okay? Long CPU bound processors tend to trickle down to the lowest priority queues, okay? If the system is heavily loaded, then we may eventually decide one of these long CPU-bound tasks to be priority boosted to have another chance to make some progress in the execution. Okay? I mean, I'm not a particular big fan of this kind of algorithm. Okay? Just it was one of the algorithms used also in the Linux scheduler to avoid excessive starvation and to allow a prompt reaction to I/O bound tasks and to short executing tasks. Okay? It's not particularly suitable for real-time purposes. Okay? It's not so suitable for real-time purposes. Okay? Why is it? Can you speculate why this algorithm is not so suitable for real-time systems? Try. No idea? Yes?
There is any concept of deadline.
Very good. So there is not any concept of deadline. Okay? We are not using the timing requirements for scheduling it. Okay? We are just using how much are you executing. Okay? Like the shorter job, right? So we are not using any notion of timing requirements here. Okay? And also, priorities are not fixed, because I may decide to give a priority based on the relative deadlines, for instance. But here, your priority, the longer you execute, your priority gets lowered from time to time. So even if you had a high priority activity, if it executes for quite a while, it goes down and you have other processes that execute instead. Okay? So it is not suitable for real-time systems. Okay? So you may ask, why are you showing that to us? Okay? Just to give an example of how general purpose scheduler are typically done. Okay? So why you may need to replace them and use a real-time one. Okay? Which we are going to see in the next slides. Okay? Let's move to the real-time scheduling algorithms. So again, real-time system basically, as we saw in the introductions, they have an associated deadline, okay? So small letter, it's an absolute deadline. Capital letter, it's a relative deadline, okay? Like in the picture here, okay? So relative deadlines are always the same for even later instances of the same task, while absolute deadlines, of course, are absolute value that change from instance to instance, okay? Okay, so this is one of the first real-time algorithms, real-time scheduling algorithm that have been proposed. So it's called earliest due date, EDD, earliest due date. It very much resembles EDF, earliest deadline first, okay? Essentially, they do the same thing, okay? Exactly the same thing. Just historically, this algorithm was proposed for non-recurring activities, not for periodic tasks, just for tasks that are arriving simultaneously with no recurring behavior. Okay? So this algorithm, which is exactly the same as EDF, but in the 50s by Jackson, this is also called Jackson's algorithm, has been proposed for activities that are ready at time zero, okay? And that just need to execute once without needing to execute further, okay? So a very simplified setting, okay? So it is a fixed priority because it bases scheduling decision on the relative deadline, okay? Which in this case, since all are ready at time zero, relative deadline and absolute deadline are exactly the same, okay? So for this setting, when all tasks arrive simultaneously and they don't repeat themselves, relative deadline and absolute deadline are exactly the same thing, okay? So preemption is not an issue because it decides to schedule tasks based on their deadlines. So first I schedule the one with the shortest deadline, then the second one, then the third one, and last the one with the largest deadline. Can you tell me why preemption here is not an issue? Why I shouldn't care about preemption? What is the mandatory condition for having preemption? If I use a deadline-based scheduler. Other question, is this scheduler based on deadline when all tasks arrive at time zero? Okay, when all tasks are ready at time zero, is this scheduler preemptive or non-preemptive? So will there ever be a case you're not allowed to talk? Is a preemptive or a non-preemptive one?
Should be a non-preemptive.
Non-preemptive. Why is a non-preemptive?
At the same time, all the tasks arrive. The priority is decided based on the
Exactly.
relative time execution. So the relative deadline. So the priority is the same.
Exactly. So since all tasks, like your colleague said, if all tasks are ready at time zero, all priorities have been decided at time zero. Okay. So if I schedule the task with the shortest deadline, there will not be another task arriving later with an earlier deadline, okay? All tasks are ready at time zero, and the schedule is already decided, and it is a non-preemptive scheduling. It's a non-preemptive schedule, okay? I will never have the case where I have, okay. So, typically preemption, so if this guy has a deadline here, typically preemption happens if a higher priority task, so with a shorter deadline, arrives here, okay? So basically in a preemptive schedule, this guy will be preempted, this guy will execute instead, and this guy will continue when it is over, okay? Here, all tasks are ready at time zero. So since I decided to schedule the task with the shortest deadline, so that it can never happen anything here that promotes, that causes a preemption. Okay? So for this kind of setting, preemption is not an issue. Okay? It will be when we will assume tasks arriving also at later times, like in the next slides. Okay? Or if we will assume periodical instances. Okay? I will prove you that such an algorithm minimizes the maximum lateness It doesn't minimize the average response times like SJF did, but this minimizes the maximum lateness, which is a much more convenient metric to minimize for real-time system settings. Okay? Okay, what is the lateness? Just to remind you, what is the lateness? Lateness is defined as the difference between finishing time and absolute deadline. Finishing time, absolute deadline. Let's see here a case where the lateness is positive. So lateness measures how late is a task with respect to its deadline. Okay? So lateness is positive when the task finishes over its deadline, beyond its deadline, after its deadline. Okay? So when this guy finishes later than its deadline, Fi minus Di will be a positive value. Okay? The lateness is negative whenever the task has some more slack. Okay? When the task finishes before the deadline, the lateness is negative. Okay? So this is the notion of deadline, of lateness. Okay? So I just said that EDD, earliest due date, minimizes the lateness. Okay? Minimizes not the lateness in general, but the maximum lateness. Not the average lateness, the maximum lateness among all tasks. Okay? What is it another way to specify that the maximum lateness is minimized? You see it in the slides. So if I'm minimizing the maximum lateness, if no task have a lateness which is positive, then no deadline is missed. So I'm minimizing the maximum lateness, okay? If the task that is latest among all tasks still finishes before its deadline, then I know that all other tasks will also finish before the deadline. I know that the other tasks will finish before the deadlines too, okay? So this is a very convenient property for real-time systems because, again, here you can see the lateness. This is the lateness for tau 1, this is the lateness for tau 2, this is the lateness for tau 3. Okay? If I minimize the maximum lateness, so I just minimize, I take the task that has the largest lateness, okay, that is the latest among the other tasks, and if it doesn't miss the deadline, no one will miss the deadlines. Okay, now let's prove the optimality of earliest due date. The strategy is very similar to the one we adopted for SJF. Okay? Here the target is different. We are not minimizing the sum of the finishing times. Okay? We are not minimizing the sum of the finishing time. Here we are minimizing something different. Okay? The maximum lateness. Okay? So lateness is, so assume that we had, like before, we prove that by contradiction. Okay? We assume something holds and reach a contradiction. Okay? So here the assumption is, let's assume that so starting from scratch, how do I prove the optimality with respect to maximum lateness of EDD? So that means that EDD, okay, is always able to minimize the maximum lateness. Seeing it at the contrary, if EDD is not able to minimize the lateness, then no other algorithm will be able to do so. So if I assume that another algorithm exists different from EDD, which leads to a lateness, a maximum lateness, which is smaller, okay, I will preview that by doing this kind of task switching again, I will reach to the same schedule of EDD, but a shorter maximum lateness. Shall I repeat? Again, so my strategy for proving that is assume a different schedule exists, which is different from EDD, okay, and which has a shorter, a better maximum lateness than EDD, okay. Then, starting from this schedule, I will do some manipulation of tasks that leads to the very same schedule of EDD and a smaller, a better, maximum lateness, okay, reaching a contradiction because I assume that this schedule was the optimal one and it was different than EDD, okay? So let's see again. So this is the original schedule where we have two tasks with associated deadlines, okay? So here, since we assume we have a different scheduling decision than EDD, we first schedule the task with later deadline and then the task with shorter deadline. Okay? So better, starting from the optimal schedule that I assumed, different from EDD, okay, different from EDD, which I assume having, again, a maximum lateness which is smaller than EDD, okay? Let's consider this schedule. So, as long as the schedule by EDD and this schedule are the same, I continue. The first time I reach a task which has a different schedule than EDD has, okay, then I do this switch, okay? So here, the fact that I'm here is that I notice that now I'm scheduling a task with later deadline before a task with shorter deadline, okay? So then I see, okay, let's switch them, okay? Let's switch them and compute what happens in terms of lateness, okay, of maximum lateness. Okay, let's see. So here, the f prime, so that sigma prime is the new schedule after this switch, okay? So the finishing time of A is smaller than it was the finishing time of the original schedule of A. So the finishing time of this sigma prime for A is smaller than what it was the finishing time of A in the original schedule. Okay? This is very easy to see. While the finishing time of B, okay, is the same of B prime in the second schedule, is the same as it was the finishing time of A before. Okay? So these are the two things that are very easy to see here, right? Any doubts about that? Okay? Okay, these are the preconditions that I notice here. Okay? So, to understand what is the maximum lateness, so in the original schedule, what is the maximum lateness? What was the maximum lateness in the original schedule? So I would need to compute dA minus FA, so the quantity FA minus dA, and finishing B and dB. Okay? So which one is the largest here? Okay? Which one is the largest? So is it this or this? Since both are negative values, I take the one which is less negative, okay? So it is this, right? Okay, any doubt? So the maximum lateness in the original schedule is equal to the lateness of A, which is FA minus dA, okay? FA minus dA, okay? This is the maximum lateness in the original schedule. Let's move to the modified schedule, okay? Now to check what is the maximum lateness, I compute the lateness of A, so this minus this, and the lateness of B, this minus this, okay? You follow me? So LA is, I said, FA prime minus dA, okay? FA prime minus dA. But we know that FA prime is strictly smaller than FA in the original schedule, okay? So we know this, okay? So we know this is shorter than this. Okay, so this inequality holds, okay? And that happens for LA prime. For LB prime, we know that LB prime is FB prime minus DB, okay? FB prime minus DB, okay? But we know that FB prime is equal to FA, okay? So FB prime is equal to FA, okay? So this is an equality here. But we also know that for what we assumed, one deadline is shorter than the other one. So I know that dB is greater than dA. I know that dB is greater than dA. So in other terms, minus dB is shorter than minus dA. Okay? So also this very last inequality holds. Okay? So look what I proved here. That the new lateness of A is smaller than the original lateness. And the new lateness in case of B is again smaller than the original lateness. Okay? Despite I take A or B, so if I take the maximum of both, I always reach the case in which the new lateness is smaller than the original one. Okay? Can you nod if it's clear? Siete annuire, se è chiaro? Okay. Do I need to explain it again, or this is one of the proofs that I would like you guys to fluently expose, okay? Just tell me if there are problems understanding, okay? Am I finished? Not, but almost, because this is just for 2 tasks. But if the original schedule had multiple tasks in a different position than in the EDD schedule, I could just repeat sigma to sigma prime for another vector sigma double prime until I eventually reach a situation where I have exactly the same scheduling decision as EDD. Okay? In all these cases, I'm going towards a minimization of the maximum lateness. Okay? The final schedule, which is coincides with EDD, is exactly the schedule that minimizes the maximum lateness. Question. Is EDD the only scheduler that minimizes the maximum lateness? Well, I don't know. We just proved that EDD minimizes the maximum lateness. There may be other schedulers that also minimize the lateness. We are not proving that it is the only one, okay? It is one of the schedulers that minimizes the maximum lateness, okay? There may be other schedulers which also minimize the lateness. Okay? Well, knowing that we are using the best scheduler we could does not solve all our problems. Okay, using a good scheduler is of course good, but in real-time system we need to provide in advance guarantees that a given task set is schedulable on my system. So I need to provide, given the task parameters that I need to schedule, of the task that I need to schedule, to provide a test, a formula, an algorithm that tells me whether I will potentially miss any deadline or not. So in this case, it's rather easy to write one. Okay? So we said all tasks are ready at time 0. Okay? All tasks are ready at time 0. So I essentially need to verify whether for each task it will complete before its deadline. How can I do that? I can basically start from the highest priority task. Okay? Call it tau 1. Okay, tau 1 is the highest priority. The highest priority will have the first deadline. Okay? So essentially I only need to check whether its finishing time is shorter than its deadline. What is the finishing time of this guy? CI, right? Is the execution time, right? Execution time is less than the deadline. Yes, tau 1 is schedulable. It is not, tau 1 is not schedulable. If it is schedulable, then let's move to task 2. What is the finishing time of task 2? Don't be afraid, it's so easy. Oh. Probably you don't want to speak because it's too easy for you. Okay, C1 plus C2, okay? So C1 plus C2 leads to the finishing time of task tau 2. Is it shorter than its deadline? Yes, schedulable. Let's go to 3. Okay, is C1 plus C2 plus C3. Is it shorter than the deadline? Yes, schedulable. What about that 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, is it schedulable? Yes. In general, it is the sum for every task, the sum of the task itself plus all previous tasks, and we check whether this sum is shorter or equal to the relative deadline of that task. Okay? How many tests do I need to execute here? If I have 10 tasks, how many inequalities do I need to check? Come on guys, are you sleeping or? How many inequalities do I have if I have 10 tasks? 10. Okay? So if I have n tasks, I have n inequalities. So we say that the complexity of this schedulability test is O of n. Okay? Is O of n. Okay? It's a linear complexity test. Okay? Basically, this sum is done for every single task. Okay? Good. Now, this was EDD, which was proposed in the 50s when tasks tasks were all available at time 0. Okay? In the real world, this is not the case. Okay? In the real world, tasks arrive online. Okay? So let's assume now, let's remove one of the assumptions that the tasks are already at time 0. But let's assume that tasks may arrive at any time. Okay? Tasks may arrive at any time. We don't anymore use the relative deadlines for scheduling. We use the absolute deadline. Okay? Again, in EDD it was the same because tasks were already at 0. Using absolute or relative was the same. Here we need to execute to schedule based on absolute deadlines. Okay? Here, yes, preemption may be an issue. Okay? Preemption may be an issue. I just showed you here case, right? If a task with an earlier deadline arrives after I started execution, whether I implement a non-preemptive scheduling or a preemptive one, it changes, okay? So, EDF, let's assume preemptive EDF, okay? Let's assume that we may preempt whenever a task with a shorter deadline arrives, okay? We allow preemption if a task with a shorter deadline arrives, okay? So we can prove that EDF is optimal with respect to the maximum lateness, also when tasks may arrive at any time. So if I base my scheduling decision on the dynamic priorities proportional to the absolute deadlines of the instances, then EDF allows you to minimize the maximum lateness. Okay? This is an example of EDF. Okay? So you can see that this guy arrives first. It is the only one in the system. His deadline is here. It executes until a task with an earlier deadline arrives. So a preemption here takes place. This guy executes. Another task arrives, but his deadline is later. Okay? So this guy can continue executing here. Another task arrives. His deadline is earlier. So it preempts. When it finishes, this guy is resumed, okay, it continues. When it finishes, it's this guy's turn. When it finishes, it resumes the previous task here, okay? So here's the way EDF, preemptive EDF scheduling algorithm would work, okay? So what if I used a non-preemptive EDF algorithm? What would have happened in that case?
The task need to take a lot of time of the CPU.
Yeah, for example, this one, okay, this preemption would not be here, but this chunk would execute here, okay? Then it would be the turn of this one, which would execute everything, okay? And then likely this guy would have missed his deadline, okay? So non-preemptive EDF is not optimal, okay? Preemptive EDF, it is optimal, okay? How can I do an online guarantee test? So here I cannot do a test at time 0 because I don't know when tasks arrives. Okay, so before, in the previous case, EDD, we knew all tasks at time 0. Okay, here tasks may arrive dynamically, okay, at runtime. So I have an online acceptance test. Okay, I can decide only based on task arrivals. Okay, so first I'm here. I'm the only guy here. I just check whether my computation time, remaining computation time, is shorter or not than the deadline. Okay, and then I continue. Here, there is a new arrival. Okay, so when I'm here, I need to check what? Whether the requirement of the new task, okay, can be executed before its deadline. Okay. Also, I need to verify whether the old task, so can execute whatever remains. So this is whatever remains of the last task at time t, plus the contribution of the higher priority task. I need to check whether this fits before the deadline of L4. Here, I have this guy arrived, this guy arrived, this guy arrived, and this guy arrived. So at time t here, I need to check what? I need to check for every one of these tasks whether its contribution is less than this. This guy needs to execute this before this. this guy needs to execute 1, 2, 3 before this, and this one 1, 2, 3, 4 before this. Okay, so I have the test like this, where basically I sum. This is not the overall worst case execution time. This is the remaining execution time at time t, okay, of all tasks that have earlier deadline than me, okay. Still, their contribution can be filled or not in the slack available from time t to my deadline. Okay? Let me repeat again. So when I'm here and this guy arrives, okay, maybe here I was schedulable, okay? But here, since a new task arrives, I need to check again. I need to check again whether the whole task set is still schedulable. Okay? So what do? I check for every task this relation here. Okay? So I check for the highest priority task. I look at what are the tasks which have a shorter deadline than my deadline. No one. Okay? So it's only whatever remains of my execution, so my whole execution. Does it fit this minus this? Yes. Then I need to check for the second task. What are the tasks which have a shorter deadline than me? It's me and this guy. Okay, so it's C1 plus C2. Is it shorter than this? Yes. Then I need to repeat another test. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then I need to repeat the last test. So all tasks which have a shorter deadline, the remaining time, I sum them and I check whether they fit my deadline minus the time I'm considering. Okay? So for any new task arrival, I need to repeat n operations. So 1 for each task. Okay? 1 for each task. Okay? So at any task arrival, I pay an O of n complexity. Okay? Summarizing, EDD, we said that EDD, all tasks are assumed ready at time 0, so the complexity of guaranteeing the whole task set statically offline is O of n. So I basically have n different inequalities, 1 for each task. Okay? Well, in EDF, since it is a dynamic scheduler and tasks may arrive dynamically, not all of them are ready at time 0, I need to pay O of n every time there is a new task arrival. Okay? Not at time 0 only, but any time there is a new task arrival. Okay? Here it was just offline once and for all, everyone was ready. Here, for any new task arrival, I need to recompute my situation. Okay? Then, sorry, here, yes. Then, what is the complexity to keep the data structure that are required for the scheduling algorithm? Basically, in EDD, if I have n tasks, I have n deadlines, I just need to sort the deadlines. Okay? Sorting algorithms, for those of you who did algorithm courses, you know that there are convenient algorithms that require n log n complexity to sort it out, okay? While if I use naive sorting strategy, I can pay much more than that, okay? There is a huge difference between using an n squared or an n log n sorting algorithm, okay? In general, I can sort a queue of n tasks in n log n time, okay? While with EDF, I better pay a little bit more when inserting a task in the queue. So again, with EDF, we assume tasks arrive dynamically, okay? Still, I have a queue of ready tasks, right? So, but whenever I have a new task arriving, I have all other tasks which are already sorted, okay? And I need to place a new task there, okay? So I better pay O of n for inserting the task in the proper position, okay? So if I have Q, okay, here I typically have the shortest deadline task in the front, and the latest deadline task in the back. Okay, when a new task arrives, okay, with deadline, I don't know, something, basically I can start comparing this one, this one, this one, this one. Oh, here, this is its place. So I potentially have O of n cost to insert a new task in the queue. Okay? So what is the advantage of paying O of n here? Is that the extraction can be made in constant time. Okay? Again, those of you which are not familiar with algorithm, but it's a very important thing to keep in mind, because in this scheduling algorithm need to behave very quickly. So I cannot take years to take a scheduling decision. And there are task systems with thousands, if not more, tasks, you know. So if I have to pay for a scheduling decision seconds, then it is not a good scheduler, okay? So the scheduler should take a decision as quick as possible, okay? So we try to optimize the time it takes to extract the new task to go and execute. If every time I need to fetch the new task, I have to pay a lot of time, the processor is underutilized, okay? So I better keep the task with the shortest deadline in the head, so that whenever the executing task is over, I already have the task to execute here. I can pay a little bit more when a new task arrives to decide its position, okay? So I can pay O of n to insert it in the queue, so that extracting it will cost me O of 1, okay? What would be an alternative solution? I can insert it in O of 1, but then extract it in O of n, okay? Or n log n, okay? Alternatively, again, I can use a binary tree where I insert in log n and I extract in log n, okay? So these are, again, you didn't probably give the algorithm course, but these are all different strategies that I can implement to keep the data structure that I need for this queue to extract and insert new tasks based on that deadline. Okay? So for now, we just assume that when all tasks are ready, I can use a sorting algorithm like quick sort, okay? And it takes n log n. For dynamic setting, we keep the ready queue sorted, we always keep it sorted, and we will pay O of n to insert the new task. Okay, we will pay a linear time to insert a new task, so that we can extract in constant time. Okay? Again, it's a trade-off. So the more you pay at insertion time, the less you pay at extraction time. Okay? So if I use a binary tree, it's log n and log n of both. But it's better to pay more in insertion and less in extraction, because extraction should be very quick. Okay? Questions? Okay. That's all for non-recurring tasks. Now we move to periodic tasks, okay? So, periodic tasks. Periodic tasks, we forget about having instances that just repeats once and never more. Here we do have tasks that repeat themselves, okay? We have multiple tasks, all where each of these tasks will have a periodic behavior, okay? As I told you, this is like the case in every real-time system. So in an automotive system, you have a sampling rate of all the sensors. You have like a path planner that have to decide based on particular sampling period. You may have an industrial automation procedure that maintains stability based on some control loops that repeats forever, okay? So you don't have in control activities something that executes once and no more, okay? For scientific computing, yes. For simulation, you just run a simulation, it's over and you're done. But in a control application and real-time systems, you typically deal with recurring activities, okay? So you need to use this information that you have on the repeating period, on the repeating rate of the instances, and you may use this information to better design your scheduler, okay? So if I know the rate of my tasks, okay, then we will see I can design proper scheduling algorithm and schedulability tests, okay, exploiting this information on the period. So for now, assume we have periodic tasks, strictly periodic tasks, okay? So every task characterized by a worst case execution time and a period, okay? So each one of these instances is called a job, that task. Okay? Every job will need to execute at worst 4 CI. Okay? And the next job basically arrives after one period from the previous one. Okay? And we either have a further parameter, which is the relative deadline here, or we just assume that relative deadlines are equal to periods. Okay? So we take the next task activation, the next job activation, as the deadline for the previous job. And this one as the deadline of this job. Okay? So this is called implicit deadline model. Implicit deadline model. Okay? Where the relative deadline coincides with the period of the task. Okay? So the deadline coincides with the next job activation. Okay? Implicit deadline model. Okay, let's see what can we do when we know that we will have periodic activations. So we know that tasks may have different periods, but they will constantly repeat at those periods. Okay? Well, timeline scheduling, so offline scheduling approaches, are the ones that have been mostly used in the Lezione domain. So what do they say? Okay, I know all my tasks since time 0. I know that they will be activated with a given period, strict period, so I know everything. If I know everything, I don't need to wait online for deciding scheduling. Okay, I can decide the scheduling at time 0. I can decide the schedule at time 0. So basically I can create a table where I specify at time 51 to 53 it goes task 3. At times 122 it goes task 4. Forever, okay, based on the periods of my tasks. So think that you have just a very simple setting with 3 tasks, okay? So if you have one task that executes for 1 every 2, okay? If you have another task that executes for 2 out of 10. If you have a third task that executes for 1 out of 3. Okay? Okay? So you have 3 tasks. 1 every 2, 1 every 2, 2 every 10, and 1 every 3. Okay? I know at time 0, I know the timing requirements of whatever job will come next. So I can write a schedule offline. Okay? Question for you guys. If I had to write a schedule offline forever, for whatever comes next, do I need to write an infinite table, or since I know that these activities are strictly periodic, I can finish at some point with that table and just reiterate it? Yes. So what is the length I shall reiterate?
The number of the task.
The sum of the period.
Depends from the largest period.
Again?
The largest period.
The largest period. The sum of the periods. Other ideas?
Number of tasks.
Number of tasks? More? None of you is right. None of you is right. Okay?
One, just because you take the ratio of every.
The ratio?
Yes.
More than the ratio? You're getting closer?
It should be the multiplication of all the value, because you have to fulfill
So the product of all periods.
product, yeah, something like that, because it should be proportional to all the periods.
Yes, you're getting closer.
Maximum, no.
Yeah, you're getting closer. Think about it. So, if I have a task with a period of 2, 3, and 10.
Non so come si dice, il minimo comune multiplo.
The least common multiple. Great. Right. The least common multiple or the greatest common divisor. The least common multiple. Why? So, what is the least common multiple here? Is 10 is 30. Okay? 30 is the least common multiple here. After 30, okay, this sequence repeats. Let's get rid of this guy because it has the hyper period too large. But let's assume something like that. Okay? Okay? So basically, at time 6, the schedule repeats again over and over and over and over and over, right? So the LCM, least common multiple of the task periods of the TIs for all I, is basically called hyper period, okay? This is the hyper period of your task system, okay? Basically, it tells you for how long shall I schedule, shall I write, shall I fill my table in to accommodate all scheduling decisions I need to take before eventually just repeating it over and over and over, okay? So I don't need to fill in an infinite table, I just need to arrive to the least common multiples of all periods, okay? Typically, to avoid having very large hyperperiods, avionic systems use harmonic periods. So in a harmonic period, with harmonic periods, every period is a multiple of another period in the system, okay? So in that way, the least common multiple coincides with the period of the largest period task in the system, okay? So this to keep the data structure sufficiently small, okay? Okay, this is also called cycle accepting or cyclic scheduling or time triggered or timeline scheduling or offline scheduling. So it goes under different names. Okay, the main paradigm has to do with strong predictability. So I know at time 0 whatever will happen in my system forever. Okay. I don't take online scheduling decision. I know everything at time 0, okay? It is used for avionic systems that need to be certified, okay? It is the most predictable scheduling system, despite I'm not a fan, this one. It tends to get inefficient, okay? Because you cannot accommodate dynamic events that may arise in your system. But if your system is sufficiently static, you don't have any possible variation in periods and nothing, then you could use this kind of system, which essentially are those used in the avionic domain. Okay, in the avionic domain, you need to certify your components. So it's called, I told you last time, so DAL is the level, the safety level that you need, you may need to verify your system. It goes to A, to D, sorry, to 1. Obviously, the other one to 1, from 1 to 4. Okay, you have different safety levels, and one of the schedulers which are used is called the ARINC scheduler that basically essentially does something of a cycle executive scheduling paradigm. Okay, so we divide basically the time axis in slots. Each task is statically allocated to a slot. And we essentially use a timer that triggers and monitors and drives the scheduling decisions, okay? So here is an example. We have 3 tasks. One task goes at 40 Hertz, one at 20 Hertz, and the other one at 10 Hertz. If you do the reciprocal, you have 25 milliseconds, 50 milliseconds, and 100 milliseconds. We are interested in finding the hyper period, so the least common multiple, but it may also be convenient to find the greatest common divisor. Why is that? Because I not only need to understand the big cycle, I also need to understand the small slots where I take scheduling decisions. So typically delta is the granularity of my scheduling decisions. Okay? If these are my tasks, I may need to decide with 25 milliseconds granularity. Okay? Delta is the greatest common divisor of these guys here. Okay? Here my granularity was 1 by definition. Okay? But if I had twice this amount, so instead of 1, 2, I had 2, 4, and instead of 1, 3, I had 2, 6, I just multiply by 2 everything, okay? So here, it is not convenient to use 1 as a granularity anymore. It would better to use 2 as a granularity, because it is the greatest common divisor, okay, among the task scheduling parameters that I have in a system. Okay, is the greatest common divisor of the scheduling parameters I have in the system. So we call minor cycle delta, major cycle t. Okay, so task A, I know it shall repeat for executing something every 25 milliseconds. Okay, and I accommodate its execution here, 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 and so on. Okay. Task B needs to execute every 50 milliseconds. So I accommodate it here, but not here. Here, but not here. Here, but not here. Okay? And task C needs to execute for something every 100 milliseconds. So I just accommodate it. Here it doesn't fit, so I go to the next one. Yes, it fits. Then I don't need anyone for 4 periods. Then I accommodate it here, and so on. Okay? So I can either manually or using some algorithm fill the scheduling table. Okay, this is a scheduling table that I'm filling in and that I will use online just to take dispatching decision. I will not take scheduling decision online. I will just dispatch tasks based on the scheduling table that I filled in at the beginning. Okay. What are the guarantees that I need here for this particular schedule? For this particular schedule, it works as long as this plus this is less than delta, and this plus this is less than delta. Okay, so CA plus CB is less than delta, CA plus CC is less than delta. Okay, this is a heuristic check that I did based on the manual fill of the scheduling table that I just made. How can I implement it? Either I have table, or I can just have a state machine which has a timer. Okay, every minor cycle, that timer fires. Every minor cycle, that timer fires. When it fires, when I'm here, the timer should fire here. Okay, the timer fires here. So I have scheduling table AB. Then the timer fires, I have a scheduling table AC. When the timer fires, I have a scheduling table AB. When the timer fires, a scheduling table A. Okay, it's exactly what we saw here. AB, AC, AB, A. AB, AC, AB, A. And so on. Okay? Major cycle will then be repeated over and over. Okay? The minor cycle, okay, tells me the scheduling decision I need to take at delta granularity. Okay? Advantages. You don't need an operating system. You don't need to keep track of ready tasks. You don't need to maintain queues. You don't need to take care of preemption and stuff like that. Everything is known at design time. You exactly know whatever happens in your system from time 0 to time infinite. Okay? Very, very predictable. Okay? That's why it is used widely adopted for avionics. Okay? Nothing shall go wrong in avionics, and also you need to certify it. So you need to provide very solid grounds on the timing requirements of your application. Each procedure shares a common address space, because I know every time, whatever happens, I can really allow sharing a common address space. Low runtime overhead. Why? I don't need to take scheduling decision. Again, just a dispatching. It's a very small overhead. Okay? No preemption, no context switch, so it's a very easy thing. It allows jitter control. Jitter, I told you last time, jitter is like this variation in task response time and activation time that you may have in dynamic schedulers. Here, you have almost no jitter, because you know exactly when each guy will execute. And you can decide by design the jitter. allocating a task sooner or later in your scheduling table. But, as I told you, I'm not a big fan of this technique, okay? First, because it only works if you know everything at time zero. But systems are not done that way. Of course, not your general purpose desktop you have there. We are not interested in that. But also automotive systems are not as predictable. So you know recurring activities, but you don't have, for instance, the same clock synchronized over all ECUs you have in the system. You may have some sensor that has a skew in the sampling rate. You may have aperiodic activities to execute once in a while. Okay? You may have alarm that should be promptly executed, but that most of the time they don't have to do anything. So you have a widely varying workload that cannot be fit into the assumption that we use for timeline scheduling. So it is not robust during overloads. So what happens if a task needs to execute a little bit longer than it was planned? It basically misses the deadline. Okay? So if a task B for instance, you remember in the slot we have A, B, and delta. So if B executes for more, it may go executing after delta, and it gets preempted, and I can have a deadline miss. While in more dynamic scheduling algorithm, I could just allow the B to execute a little bit longer, okay, and accommodate. Let's see it here. So here, what happens if B executes for a long time, okay? As soon as I arrive here at delta, I have the timer firing, okay, and I have a deadline miss, okay? So I'm done. So I cannot do anything more. While in the dynamic scheduler, I could just allow B to execute a little bit longer. Still, I have some slack here, okay, and this guy can go a little bit longer on, okay. So this is what we will do with dynamic scheduler. We will make a better use of the slack we have in the system. Okay. Also, what happens if I need to add a new task in my scheduling table? I had, with a lot of effort, produced my table, my very long table for my 100 tasks. I need to add one more task there. Well, it's a mess. It costed us for making a table with 3 tasks. Imagine with 100 tasks, it's a lot of balancing the slack around the various tasks. And if another one arrives, I should completely rewrite my scheduling table from scratch. So that requires typically a lot of effort. It is not easy to handle aperiodic activities. It is based for periodic and strictly periodic activities. If I have a task that executes with a slightly different period or just aperiodically, I cannot accommodate it here. All process periods shall be a multiple of the minor cycle time. Okay, so you need to have this integer relation between major cycle and minor cycle. So task period shall be properly designed. As soon as I have 2 mutually prime periods, the hyper periods tend to increase exponentially. Okay? So if I have 3 tasks which are mutually prime among them, the hyper period is, by math, the product of all of them. Okay? So if I have a period of 100 and 101, okay, the hyper period becomes 10,100. Okay? So this is like a very long table which is not convenient to use. Of course, the longer period you have, the longer will be the scheduling table. Difficult to construct, difficult to maintain. Variable computation time will need to be split into different fixed size procedures. Okay? So typically the slot we have with no preemption is determined by my delta. Okay? If a task needs to execute for more time, it will need to be split into multiple of these boxes that are scheduled in different minor cycle times. Okay? Again, predictable, but not so flexible at all. So it is really unflexible. So what would happen during overloads? During overloads, what can happen is a domino effect on the other tasks. So if a task executes for more than what allotted to, this may lead to multiple deadline miss. Or we may need to abort the tasks. Okay, aborting the task typically leave the shared resource or the state inconsistent. Okay, so it is something that we are not wanting to do that. What if expandability? What if B needs to execute more than what we planned before? Okay, so what if B shall be increased by something so that now CA plus CB is greater than delta? Okay, this requires us to choose a bigger delta, okay, or to split B into two boxes and having B with a different period, okay. So, for instance, this is an option. Now we have a B1 and a B2, a B1 and a B2, okay. So if B has more time than the slack of your minor cycles, you can either decide to increase the minor cycle or to divide the execution of B into two slots. Okay, this is kind of a preemption, okay? Maybe your application is not easily preemptible. And again, this requires you to complicate your scheduling table, because now B will have multiple entries in your scheduling table. Okay? The guarantees is again the same, just using B1 and B2 plus CC in the other formula here. Okay? If you change the frequency, here, the impact, so if you change the frequency from 50 milliseconds to 40 milliseconds, the period of task B, the impact may be even higher. Okay? So the minor cycle gets to 5. So here it was 25, right? These were harmonic periods, okay? Harmonic periods, greatest common divisor is this, least common multiple is this. If I just decrease 50 to 40, greatest common divisor is 5, right? It's 5, right? And what is the least common multiple? Least common multiple is 200, right? Or it's 100, no, it's 200, yeah? So 200 is the least common multiple. So before we had 4 minor cycles, okay, every major cycles. Here we need to have 40 minor cycles every major cycles, okay? So our state machine will have 40 instances, which is a lot of complexity added here. And we still have just 3 tasks. Imagine having 100 tasks, okay? Example. So these are our 3 tasks, okay? We can decide as a minor cycle to use 5, okay? You can see how much more complex is our scheduling table here. We need to fill in 40 slots, and in these slots we need to fit all these bigger instances, a lot of preemptions, a lot of splitting tasks into the slots, okay? Much more difficult in this case. Did I give the intuition? Okay? So this cannot be accommodated here without it being split. Okay? We don't like that. Okay. That's why I prefer using some more online-driven scheduling decision. So now we are slowly moving to the real-time online scheduling algorithm. So priority scheduling. Again, it's the same priority scheduling we saw before. Here we use recurring activities, periodic instances. So each task is assigned a priority based on its timing constraints. We then use a schedulability test to check whether all deadlines will be met. Okay? And then I will have some operating system support to get this task in execution. So to take online scheduling decision. I cannot base something on a table. I will need the OS to make some computation, some bookkeeping, some data structure, some queue updating function, which are typical tasks executed by the scheduling module. Okay, rate monotonic. The first fixed priority scheduler that we will see for periodic tasks. Rate monotonic. So this was proposed by Liu and Leila in the 673. This is the most cited paper in the real-time community. Okay? the most cited paper, the 70s. So it's very simple. So they just propose to assign priorities based on the periods. So if I have a short period, higher priority. A long period, lower priority. Okay? So now we are trying to make use of the information we have on the period. Okay? So how would that task set execute? So this guy has highest priority. So whenever it is ready, it will preempt the other one, and it will always execute when it arrives. Okay? So assume that we're using preemptive fixed priority. The second one will execute here, with smaller priority. It arrives here, can execute. It arrives here, can execute here. The third one has a smallest priority, so it executes here. Note that here it gets preempted, it resumes here it's preempted again, it resumes here, and here it completes. Okay? So essentially you can see that preemption arises, okay, but it's a more dynamic scheduling algorithm. So what if, why is it better to have a dynamic one? What if I have transient overloads? So transient overloads are, what if task executes a little bit more than we imagined before, okay? It's very difficult to compute the worst case execution time. So we typically have upper bounds, and we need to be robust in whatever happens if that task blocks or executes for more than allotted, or so assume that tau A executes a little bit longer and tau B executes a little bit longer. Okay? You can see that the schedule does not change much. Okay? The schedule does not change much. Okay? It is robust to allocate with online dynamic scheduling decision the added time, execution time that you have in your system. Okay? You don't have a time-driven interrupt that was in place in the time-trigger scheduling, in the cyclic executive table-driven scheduling. Here, it's an online-based decision, so you can accommodate transient overloads. Okay, that about the way it works. Again, for inserting tasks in a queue, you can do that in O of n, where n being the number of priorities here, and extraction in O of 1. But how do we verify whether a system is schedulable? We cannot use the same algorithm we had before, just summing execution time and checking them against the deadline. Why not? Because here we have multiple jobs for a same task. So we cannot just sum the execution time like before. We need to take into account also the period of the tasks. So in order to do an offline schedulability test, so a test that tells me whether these tasks will be feasible on a given processor, I need to take into account also the period of my tasks. We will see that a convenient parameter to use, convenient metric to use is for each task, it's utilization. Okay? The utilization is the worst case execution time over the period. Okay? So here utilization is 1/2. Here utilization is 1/3. Okay? It basically tells you how much processor share will be on average occupied by that task. Okay? A task that executes for 3 time units, every 3 time units has 100% share of the processor. Of course, it will continuously fill the processor. Okay? That for each task. If we sum the utilization of all tasks, that's the overall processor utilization. This tells us how much is the processor busy executing tasks. Okay? Of course, if I have a utilization greater than 1, I will have deadline misses. Okay? That's trivial. Okay? I require more than the processor is allowed to execute. But also, even if the global utilization will be less than 1, I may have deadline misses. That's about real-time scheduling. So I can show you cases in which the utilization is 0.7, so 30% of the processor is empty, but still it leads to deadline misses. Okay? Anyway, U is a measure, is a metric for measuring the processor load. Okay? This, as I told you, so we cannot allow the utilization to be greater than 1. Okay, that would mean that the system is overloaded and at least some of the tasks will miss its deadline. Okay, but still there are cases in which the utilization is smaller than 1 and still the task set is not schedulable with my scheduling algorithm. For instance, with array monotonic, there are cases in which with 0.7 I can have a deadline miss. Let's see here a case where the utilization is 0.9 something. Okay, this is less than 1, but it's a trivial case where I have just 2 tasks. Task 1 that have a utilization on a half, so executing 3 time units every 6 time units, and tau 2 which executes for 4 time units every 9 time units. Okay, so rate monotonic, I assign highest priority to tau 1, okay, and lower priority to tau 2. So when both are ready, tau 1 starts, then this guy starts, here it is preempted, and when it resumes, it's too late because it already missed its deadline. Okay? So if you do the math, utilization is what you see there. So smaller than the full processor utilization is 0.9, but still I have deadline misses. Okay? Could I use a better scheduling algorithm? Yes. Yes. But not with the static fixed priority. Okay, we will see that again. Again, my question was, could I use a better dynamic scheduling algorithm? Okay, online, or the dynamic online scheduling algorithm? Yes, I could use. For instance, EDF. I can show you that EDF here would not miss a deadline. Okay, but still, if I wanted to use an algorithm with a fixed priority, static fixed priority, so the priority of the task will never change during their execution, then no algorithm would allow you to meet the deadline. Let me repeat again. Rate monotonic is the best priority assignment you could use in a fixed priority setting. If you wanted better scheduling algorithm, you would need to use a dynamic priority scheduling algorithm like EDF. But about fixed priority scheduling algorithm, static priority scheduling algorithm, rate monotonic is the best one you could use when deadlines are equal to periods. Okay? We will see that back later again. Just to tell you, what would EDF do here? Can you answer me? So this is the schedule with rate monotonic. What would that earliest deadline first schedule do here? When would it, at what time would the schedule be different? Yes?
It would end the blue job, the first blue job.
Yes?
And
Here, at time 6, right?
Yes.
At time 6, so this log will be here. Why is that? Okay, because this job is over, so you should not consider this deadline here. But here at this time, the jobs that are ready are this one with deadline here, and this one with deadline here. Okay? Which one has an earlier deadline? This guy. Okay? So this will be executed here, okay, and then only then this one, which will execute here until here, okay, and then this one will be executed. Whatever of the two, it will finish. One of the two will finish close to its deadline. So I will have my deadline met. Okay, no deadline missed with EDF. Okay, you can try to do the example code. Okay, try to make some schedule out of this kind of task sets. These are typically questions that I can make for the intermediate written exam for the oral exam. Okay, so build up your schedule with EDF for these 3 tasks, whatever will happen. Okay. Okay. So here you have 2 other task systems, 2 other tasks. I just replaced the second one with one that executes 3 every 9, the first one 3 every 6. So hyper period is 18, okay? So this guy executes, and this, and you have 3 empty cycles at the end, okay? Utilization is 0.8. So what happens if I increase a little bit the computation time of this guy or of this guy? Well, it's written down. Okay? It's written down. So if this executes an epsilon more, this guy will be delayed a little bit more. So here it will still have to execute something when it's preempted, and this guy will, the last bar will actually execute beyond its deadline. Okay? The same if this guy will execute a little bit longer, preempted, and will execute after its deadline. Okay? So an epsilon increase in any of the computation time would lead to a deadline miss. Okay? And while here, here again, it means that the maximum utilization I can get with a system of this kind is 0.8. If I increase by an epsilon, whatever, I cannot have schedulability, okay, a schedulable condition. But there are other cases in which I can reach 1. So these are two task systems, 2, 4, and 4, 8, 2, 4, and 4, 8, 4, 8. Okay, basically hammer theory is this one, it just repeats over and over. Okay, where the task set is clearly schedulable. Okay, no deadline miss here. And utilization is 1. Okay, what do I learn here? That it is not sufficient to take a look at the utilization. Okay, the utilization alone does not tell me if a task system is schedulable or not. Okay, it is not a necessary and sufficient condition. Okay. We know that utilization greater than 1 is a condition that tells me unschedulability. But we don't know whether utilization less than 1 is a sufficient schedulability condition. Okay? So there are task sets with utilization smaller than 1 which are schedulable, like this one, and others which are not. Okay? Like this one. So what we are interested here is to understand what is the smallest utilization among unschedulable task sets. So again, my question is, okay, I have task sets which are schedulable with utilization smaller than 1, other one which are not schedulable with utilization smaller than 1. Okay? So I wonder, what is the smallest utilization that I can use to find an unschedulable task set with rate monotonic? So my question is, does any task with utilization 0.5 exist which would lead to a deadline miss or not? The answer is no. So does exist any 0.8 task system which is not schedulable with rate monotonic? Well, it depends. So I'm looking for a least upper bound of schedulable utilization. So here every bar is a different task set. Okay, so I have different task sets here. This is just to tell you that if the bar is above 1, it will not be schedulable. Okay? But I will also tell you that if my bar, if my task has a utilization like here, it will be for sure schedulable. Okay? In between here, it depends. Okay? So I'm looking for what is the lowest height of this bar that I could use, that I could exploit to basically derive an unschedulable condition, a potentially unschedulable condition. So that I can use this metric to determine whether a task system is for sure schedulable or not. Better said, I would like to derive a sufficient condition, not necessarily insufficient. It is an only sufficient condition, okay, that tells me if my task system has an overall utilization which is smaller than this bar height, smaller than the utilization least upper bound, then the task set is certainly schedulable with rate monotonic. Okay? This is a convenient stop point. I will restart again next time to show you that the least upper bound with rate monotonic can be derived with a rather simple formula which is essentially a function of the number of tasks. Okay? Given n, the number of tasks, I can compute the utilization list upper bound. Okay? So we will start back when tomorrow? Yes, tomorrow from this concept of list upper bound, and we will slowly introduce the schedulability test for EDM. Okay? See you guys tomorrow.